how World War I changed the world. What started this huge fight between countries, and how did it change things for everyone? In just a few minutes, you'll learn all about World War I and see how it made the world different. Part 1. Prelude to the War. Let's go back to the time before the war started. Europe was full of big countries, each wanting to be the strongest. They formed groups with other countries to protect themselves, but this didn't keep peace. Instead, it made things tense, like a tight rope that could snap any moment. The world was changing fast. New machines made lots of goods quickly, and trains carried them everywhere. Countries were also making more powerful weapons. They all wanted to get more land and resources, which led them to push into other parts of the world. People were very proud of their countries. This pride made them feel strong together, but also made them compete with other countries. It was like a big sports rivalry, but much more serious. Countries started making deals, forming teams. Some countries were together in one team and some in another. They thought this would stop fights, but it actually made the chance of a big war even higher. One place, called the Balkans, was very troubled. People there wanted to be free from a big empire, but this could cause a big fight. The shooting of a prince was just the final straw, but the stack was already high with problems and competition. Before the war, it was like all the countries were getting ready for a big storm. They kept making more weapons and getting their armies bigger. Everyone knew a big fight was coming. They thought a war might solve their problems. They didn't know how bad it would be. You might ask, why didn't they stop and think? Many felt a big war was going to happen no matter what. They thought it might even be good. They didn't know that it would change the world in very sad ways. This was how things were before World War I. Countries were strong and full of pride, but also very close to fighting. The world was moving fast, but heading towards a very dark time. The war that came changed everything in ways no one could have imagined it. As Europe teetered on the edge, a single event in Sarajevo sparked the fire that would engulf the world. The stage was set, the actors ready. What followed would change history forever. Let's see how the world stepped into the Great War. Part 2. The Spark in Sarajevo. On a warm June morning in 1914, Sarajevo was about to become the center of the world's attention. This is where the spark for World War I was lit, a moment that changed history. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was visiting Sarajevo with his wife Sophie. They were in a car, waving to the crowds, not knowing the danger they were in. A group of young men had a plan that day, a plan to make a statement for their cause. Gavrilo Princip, a young man with strong beliefs about his country's freedom, stepped forward and shot the Archduke and his wife. This act of violence was shocking. Franz Ferdinand was not just any royal. His death was a direct challenge to Austria-Hungary's power. The news spread fast. All over Europe, people were stunned. Austria-Hungary was furious and blamed Serbia, where Princip was from. This single event set off a chain reaction. Countries started calling on their allies, ready to defend their honor and interests. Within weeks, the great powers of Europe were drawn into conflict. It wasn't just about the murder anymore. It was about years of tensions, rivalries, and the complex web of alliances. The world was now on the path to a war that would engulf continents. Sarajevo's tragedy was the fuse that ignited the powder keg of Europe. The assassination was more than a murder. It was the spark that lit the fire of World War I. What followed was a war that reshaped the world, its empires, and its people. Now Europe was on the edge, and everyone was watching. A single event was about to turn into a huge war. Let's see how this big fight changed countries and the stories of people who lived through it. Part 3. The war begins. After the tragedy in Sarajevo, countries quickly picked sides. The big teams were the Allies, including France, Russia and Britain, against the Central Powers, led by Germany and Austria-Hungary. This was the start of a huge fight that spread across the world. Germany had a plan to quickly attack France before Russia could get ready. They marched through Belgium to get to France, but Belgium wasn't going to let them pass without a fight. This move made Britain join the war to help Belgium, a friend they had promised to protect. The first big battles were fierce. Germany got close to Paris, France's capital, but the French and their friends from Britain pushed them back. This fight showed everyone that the war wouldn't be short or easy. World War I also brought a completely new strategy that changed modern warfare forever. The strategy is called trench war. This method of warfare was characterized by two opposing sides digging deep trenches as defensive positions to protect themselves from enemy fire. The area between the opposing trenches, known as no man's land, was often a deadly ground covered with barbed wire, mines, and the remains of failed attacks. The strategy behind trench warfare was largely defensive. Each side aimed to hold its ground and inflict heavy casualties on the enemy. The trenches were dug in complex networks, with frontline trenches for attacks and defense, support trenches where reserves waited, and communication trenches that allowed movement between the front and rear without exposure to enemy fire. Attackers faced daunting challenges. They had to navigate no man's land under heavy artillery and machine gun fire, cut through barbed wire, and then overcome the defenders' trenches, all while exposed to enemy fire. The goal was often to break through the enemy's defenses and force a retreat, but advances were usually minimal and came at a high cost. Life for soldiers in the trenches was brutal. Conditions were harsh and unsanitary, leading to diseases like trench foot, caused by prolonged exposure to cold, wet conditions, and trench fever, spread by lice. Rats were a constant nuisance, feeding on the remains of fallen soldiers. The threat of death was ever present, from sniper fire, artillery barrages, or gas attacks. Psychological strain was immense. The constant bombardment, the sight of dead and wounded comrades, and the uncertainty of survival took a heavy toll on soldiers' mental health. Many suffered from shell shock, now recognized as a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, better known as PTSD. The stalemate of trench warfare resulted in a war of attrition, with both sides suffering massive casualties for little territorial gain. The Battle of the Somme and the Battle of Verdun are infamous examples, each resulting in over 1 million casualties combined, with only marginal changes in the front lines. As the war went on, millions of soldiers and civilians lost their lives. Cities were destroyed, and families were torn apart. The war changed the world in ways that no one could have imagined. But the early battles were just the beginning. As the world plunged deeper into war, new heroes emerged, and the face of battle changed forever. Stay with us as we uncover the stories of courage and innovation that defined the next phase of the war. Part 4. Breaking the Deadlock, the Rise of Tanks. Continuing from where we left off, the war intensified, and the world witnessed unprecedented changes both on the battlefield and at home. This period marks a significant shift in warfare tactics, the spirit of nations, and the emergence of new technological marvels that would redefine combat. As we continue our journey through the Great War, the battlefronts are evolving. The year is now 1916, and both sides are already dug in. Because of a slow progression with trench warfare, it was expected that someone had to come up with an idea that could make a breakthrough. And that's exactly what happened. Let me introduce to you the first tank ever made. They were developed by the British, marking a revolutionary shift in warfare technology. These early tanks were designed to break the deadlock of trench warfare, navigating the difficult terrain of no man's land, crushing barbed wire, and offering some protection against machine gun fire to the advancing infantry behind them. The first tank model to be produced was the British Mark I. It was an armored vehicle equipped with caterpillar tracks, which allowed it to cross rough terrain, and it was armed with machine guns and cannons. The design was far from perfect, with slow speeds, mechanical reliability issues, and vulnerability to artillery. However, its ability to cross trenches, crush barbed wire, and withstand small arms fire made it a valuable asset in breaking through enemy lines. The Mark I tank made its battlefield debut at the Battle of Flers-Courcelette on September 15, 1916, as part of the larger Battle of the Somme. This marked the first time tanks were used in combat. On that day, 49 tanks were deployed with the aim of breaking through the German defenses. Although the impact of tanks in this initial engagement was limited due to mechanical failures and the difficulties of the terrain, their psychological effect on the German troops was significant. The sight of these metal beasts slowly advancing through no man's land, impervious to rifle fire, was unsettling for the enemy forces. The war is not just a European affair. Troops from across the globe are now part of this conflict. From the dusty plains of Africa to the shores of Gallipoli, the war's reach is vast, pulling nations and their people into its orbit. It's a reminder of the interconnectedness of our world, even in times of division. Back home, the war changed everything. Women took over jobs that men who were fighting left empty. They worked in factories, drove ambulances, and helped as nurses. What they did was very important. They helped keep everything running, both for the war and at home. This shows how strong and flexible people can be when things get tough. As we move deeper into the war years, the impact on the world is profound. Borders are being redrawn, societies are changing, and the very nature of warfare has transformed. The Great War, with all its horror and heroism, is reshaping the future in ways unimaginable before 1914. But the story is far from over. The war's final years bring even more change, challenging the resolve of nations and individuals alike. Join me as we explore the concluding chapters of this global conflict, where the seeds of a new world are sown amidst the ashes of the old. Part 5. Last Battles of World War I. As we delve deeper into the heart of World War I, the years 1917 and 1918 emerge as pivotal. The relentless grind of trench warfare, the entrance of new players on the global stage, and transformative battles shape these final years of conflict, leading toward an uncertain horizon. The year 1917 begins with the landscape of war frozen, both in the literal sense and metaphorically, as neither side can claim decisive victory. Yet, change is on the horizon, signaling shifts that will alter the course of the war. In Russia, weariness from the war sparks revolution, leading to the downfall of the Tsar, and eventually bringing the Bolsheviks to power. Russia's subsequent exit from the war with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in early 1918 reshapes the Eastern Front and allows Germany to concentrate its forces in the West. 1917 also marks the entry of a new key player, the United States. Drawn into the conflict by unrestricted submarine warfare and the Zimmermann telegram, America's vast resources and fresh troops provide a much-needed boost to the beleaguered allies. As the year progresses, battles like the Third Battle of Ypres, also known as Passchendaele, and the innovative use of tanks at Cambrai, highlight the evolving nature of warfare. These battles, marked by unimaginable losses and momentary gains, underscore the war's brutality and the stalemate on the Western Front. 1918 ushers in a series of decisive movements. Germany, seeking a knockout blow before American forces can fully engage, launches the Spring Offensive. This push initially gains ground, but ultimately fails to break the Allied lines. The Allies, bolstered by American troops and revitalized by new strategies, begin a series of counteroffensives. Meanwhile, the war's global impact deepens. From the sands of the Middle East to the waters of the Atlantic, the conflict touches every corner of the globe, reshaping empires and drawing new maps. As the Allies push forward, breaking through the Hindenburg Line, the Central Powers begin to crumble. Finally, on November 11th, 1918, the guns fall silent. The armistice is signed, marking the end of the war. The world breathes a sigh of relief, but the landscape it awakens to is forever changed. Empires have fallen, new nations are born, and the seeds for future conflicts are unwittingly sown. The Great War, a conflict that reshaped the world, ends not with a definitive victory, but with questions and challenges for the future. As we look back, we remember the millions lost and the hope for a peace that would last. Join me next time as we explore the war's aftermath and its deep, lasting impact on the 20th century and beyond. This continuation follows the timeline of World War I through its concluding years, exploring key developments, battles, and the eventual end of the war, setting the stage for a discussion on its aftermath and legacy. With the war's end, the world looks to rebuild and make sense of the immense loss. But peace comes with its own challenges. Stay tuned as we uncover the aftermath of the Great War and how it shapes the future of nations and the course of history. The last part, post-war settling. As the guns fell silent, the monumental task of rebuilding began. Across Europe and beyond, cities lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and societies were deeply scarred by loss. The path to recovery was fraught with challenges, but also with opportunities to forge a new world from the ashes of the old. In 1919, the Paris Peace Conference convened, bringing together leaders from the Allied powers to shape the post-war world. The Treaty of Versailles, signed on June 28th, became the most famous and controversial outcome of these deliberations. It aimed not only to secure peace, but to hold the Central Powers, especially Germany, accountable for the war. Germany faced severe restrictions under the treaty. Its military was drastically reduced, territories were lost, and it was saddled with crippling reparations payments to the Allies. These penalties, intended to prevent future aggression, instead sowed seeds of resentment and economic hardship. Beyond the penalties and politics, the real work of rebuilding touched every level of society. In cities like London, Paris, and Berlin, reconstruction efforts slowly transformed rubble-strewn streets into habitable spaces again. Meanwhile, countries like Belgium and France toiled to revive agriculture and industry from the war's extensive devastation. The war's impact reached far beyond Europe. The Ottoman Empire's dissolution reshaped the Middle East, with new nations emerging from its remnants under the Mandate system. In Africa and Asia, colonial rule continued, but was increasingly challenged by calls for independence, inspired in part by the war's upheaval. The war also accelerated social change. Women, having taken on roles in factories and fields, began to demand greater rights and suffrage. Technological advancements made during the war found peacetime applications, changing how people worked, communicated, and lived. Perhaps the most ambitious outcome of the post-war period was the creation of the League of Nations. Envisioned as a forum for resolving international disputes and ensuring peace, it embodied the world's collective hope for a future free from the scourge of war. Though its success would be limited, the League marked a significant first step towards towards global governance and cooperation. In the end, the post-war period was a time of rebuilding and reflection, of penalties and promises. While the immediate aftermath of World War I sought to mend a fractured world, the penalties imposed on losing countries would have lasting effects, laying the groundwork for future conflicts. Yet, amid the challenges, there was also a profound desire for peace and a determination to build a better world. The legacy of the Great War, complex and multifaceted, would forever shape the course of the 20th century. As we wrap up our journey through World War I, we've seen the massive battles, the incredible bravery, and the deep sadness it brought to millions. This war reshaped borders, brought down empires, and changed the way wars were fought forever. But it also taught the world about the cost of conflict and the value of peace. From the trenches in Europe to the waters of the Atlantic, from the dusty deserts of the Middle East to the bustling cities back home, every story we've uncovered has shown us how deeply this war touched lives. We've seen how people stepped up to face unimaginable challenges and how those efforts have shaped the world we live in today. World War I wasn't just about the fighting. It was about the spirit of humanity in the face of disaster. It showed the world the importance of working together and the need to strive for a peaceful future. As we remember this war, let's not forget the lessons it taught us about bravery, sacrifice, and the ongoing quest for peace. Now, with a deeper understanding of World War I, you can see its lasting impact on our world. It's a reminder of where we've been and where we hope to go, shaping our collective memory and guiding us toward a future where such a conflict never happens again, at least for another 20 years.